My name is Ciaran Murray. I'm a chartered physiotherapist. I am working as senior physiotherapist to the Irish international team, Republic of Ireland international team, for the past 16 years. The players are contracted to the clubs. They are released by the clubs at the request of the National Association and with the agreement of the clubs. So we have to reconcile the interest of the club with the demands of the international team. So generally, the club will not release the player unless they're quite happy with his injury status, as in if he's physically fit to play for the club, they will then generally release him for the international team. If the player then tells us or reveals to us that he actually has an injury complaint, well then we obviously need to have a good chat with the player, a good examination, listen to the player and decide whether or not he actually is fit to be with the national squad, or whether we need to communicate with the club and say, look, there is a concern, perhaps he didn't highlight it to you, and now perhaps we need to send him back to the club. The size of the medical staff at particular clubs, obviously if it is a top Premier League club, they're going to have a much greater sports medicine, medical support budget and extended staff than, let's say, a championship club or certainly a League One club. But the top clubs in the Premiership with much bigger budgets will certainly have greater staff and have access then to perhaps more outside expert opinion as well. I think perhaps also what's important is they may have a stronger squad so that if a key player gets injured, they actually can afford to intervene early and rest and rehabilitate that player because they perhaps have a player who's just as good who can slot into that position. There is a lot of communication required. The medical staff can just present the information to the manager and say, look, this is what the player was complaining of. This is the examination and these are the investigations that we've done. The player feels that he is not 100%. If the player feels that his injury is getting worse, well then we have to listen to that. You can present that information to the manager and ultimately you can say, do you think that this player can do the job that you would like him to do? He has an injury, he is getting worse. Do you still consider that he can do the job for the team that you would like him to do? And ultimately, it is the manager's decision, but we will certainly, our job is very much to protect the welfare of the player, and we will very much present a very strong case to the manager relating the player's injury, the investigations, the examinations, and what our recommendation is. And you're hoping that the manager will listen to the advice and that the problem can come to a good resolution for the benefit of the individual player. Well, experienced players will be particularly knowledgeable. Number one is they may have previous experience of injuries, but also they have come through the system, through the club system with their teammates and their friends and their colleagues, all of whom will have sustained particular injuries at particular times, and that obviously is the biggest thing in the player's life if he's got an injury and he's not available to play. So players are going to spend plenty of time talking to each other and sharing knowledge. So players are quite well informed about the different particular injuries and are quite knowledgeable about that. The experienced player may realise, look, I've got an injury here which is not getting better. In fact, it's getting worse. This is the nature of the injury. If I want to continue playing, ultimately I'm going to need to take a relative rest period, get myself treated and get the appropriate rehabilitation and get myself back to a full level of fitness because I have 60 games to play this year, 60 games to play next year, 60 games for the rest of my career. The younger player, he's trying to make the breakthrough, perhaps hasn't established himself at club level, hasn't established himself at the international team level yet. So when he gets an injury, maybe he's going to go into a little bit of denial, think with his heart, maybe it'll go away. It's difficult for the younger player to perhaps say to the manager, look, I've got an injury. I've spoken to the medical staff. The medical staff will speak to the manager, but it's probably more difficult for the younger player because he is so keen and anxious to establish himself on the club team and of course on the international team. So players generally a lot more knowledgeable than they would have been perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. So too are the sports medicine clinicians. And we are trying to obviously increase the knowledge of the managers and coaches as well.